Hello and welcome back to my Tunisian Stitches collection. I'm Sarah. Today I'm showing you a beautiful and useful Tunisian stitch called the Tunisian Tweed Stitch. This stitch is worked in multiples of 2 plus 2 stitches and is a combination of 2 stitches we already know, the Tunisian Simple Stitch and the Tunisian Twisted Stitch, or let's say a variation of the Tunisian Twisted Stitch. The Tunisian Tweed Stitch is worked in a 2-row repetition. So let's begin. As usual, I have started with a standard foundation row in Tunisian crochet of 12 stitches that counts as row number 1. In row number 2, I will start with the stitch pattern. Row number 2 is also the first row of our repetition of 2 rows. So I begin by working into the first stitch in Tunisian Simple Stitch. So I just go with my hook under the first vertical bar, yarn over and drop a loop. Now I will work into the following stitch in Tunisian Twisted Stitch. So, how's it done? I have 2 variations of the Tunisian Twisted Stitch. Okay, so I go with my hook, not from right to left under the vertical bar, as if for a Tunisian Simple Stitch, but from left to right. So I need to work with my hook, go under it, grab the yarn, twist it slightly like that, and now I can yarn over, pull through and up on the hook. Okay, now I'll work into the following stitch in Tunisian Simple Stitch, and into the next stitch in Tunisian Twisted Stitch again. So grab the yarn like this, yarn over and drop a loop. Again, Tunisian Simple Stitch, followed by a Tunisian Twisted Stitch. And so on, alternating between Tunisian Simple Stitch and Tunisian Twisted Stitch until the end of the forward pass. Okay, when you reach the end of the forward pass and you reach the last stitch, work it in a neat closing stitch. So insert the hook under its front vertical bar and its back bar at the same time, like this. Yarn over and drop a loop. Now proceed with a standard return pass. So yarn over and pull through 1 loop only once, then yarn over again and pull through 2 loops together, repeating the second movement until the end of the row. So now we will start row number 3, which is the second repetition of our pattern. So what you do is you start immediately with a twisted stitch. So you grab the yarn from right to left, twist it, and pull up a loop, followed by a Tunisian Simple Stitch. So the only difference compared to row number 2 is that we stagger the stitches we are working. So now twisted stitch, and simple stitch. you can already see that we are creating these small vertical V's here. The same kind of V's we are creating when we are doing the Tunisian Rib Stitch 1 times 1. Okay? But in this case, we are not forming lines of these V's, vertical lines, but we are staggering them. So this is the main difference. Another thing I wanted to talk about is the way I am doing the Tunisian Twisted Stitch. There are two ways, two variations, and you can find both of them in my Tunisian Stitches collection. This is the one we are using for the Tunisian Rib Stitch 1 times 1, as I said. The difference is this. In this case, we are grabbing the yarn from left to right, but instead of turning our hook this way, we are turning it the other way around. And there is a big difference because you are obtaining two different kinds of stitches by rotating the hook differently, by twisting the stitch differently. So this is very important that you note the difference. Another thing I wanted to talk about is this. At the beginning, I had some difficulties in doing this variation of the twisted stitch because I have some difficulties in twisting the hook in the way I'm doing it, I'm showing you. So, as I suggested in my rib stitch tutorial, an easier way to do this kind of Tunisian twisted stitch is this. So if you just insert the hook into the stitch you want to do the twisted stitch right now, but you insert the hook from right to left as if for Tunisian Simple Stitch, you kind of elongate the yarn like this, then you slip off the hook from there, holding the yarn with your fingers and turning it to the right like this. You create a little hole. You can then insert the hook in it and you have your twisted stitch because you can just yarn over and pull up a loop and there's your twisted stitch. So I find this is an easier way to do the twisted stitch if you have some difficulties. Okay, so I'll repeat it. This is the Tunisian Simple Stitch. Oops. And the Tunisian Twisted Stitch, done as I've just shown you. So grab the yarn, elongate it a bit, slip the hook off, turn it with your fingers, insert the hook again, and drop a loop. Okay? Now, Tunisian Simple Stitch, and neat closing stitch. And return pass. Now to proceed with the stitch pattern, you would need to repeat row number 2, so the first repetition, now in row number 4, followed by the second repetition, that is to say row number 3, the one I've just shown you. I hope this is clear how the repetition is done. You just need to stagger those little V's here, those vertical V's. And that's the pattern, the stitch pattern explained. I find it really lovely and very useful. I think I will be using it for maybe a sweater project, I don't know. I really like this. And that's it for today. Thank you for watching and see you next time with another beautiful Tunisian stitch. Bye bye.